You've spent the long weekend digging through the crime archives.
3 total psychopaths could be out walking the streets in the next few weeks and months because they're eligible for consideration for parole. First, and the decision will be made in 3 weeks on this one, is a sadistic child killer named James Stapleton. He's going before the Prisoner Review Board, which we call the Parole Board, 23 years after he was sentenced for torturing and killing teenager Cleon Jackman. Cleon was 14. Stapleton bashed, tortured and eventually killed him over a period of 4 or 5 hours in a house in Langford. And later that day, that's May 11, 1999, he buried Cleon's body in bush near Pickering Brook.
How old is Stapleton now?
He's in his 60s. He could be walking down your street in less than a month. He hog-tied Cleon and taped 4 plastic shopping bags around his head before he killed him. Stapleton had 2 accomplices, Darren Elizabeth Bardsley, she was an apprentice jockey, and Rebecca Tilema Papali. She was a hooker.
What happened to them?
Well, they could actually be out as we speak. They were sentenced to a minimum of about 18 years. I think one of them got 17 and a half, but that was cut to a minimum of 12 years. So they would have been eligible for parole about 10 years ago.
This kind of information makes people very nervous.
No wonder. It takes a particular type of evil to outdo James Stapleton, but this guy managed it. That's Dante Arthurs. The name will ring a bell. He raped and killed this little girl. Sophia Rodriguez Uratazu was 8 years old when she went into a toilet in a Canning Vale shopping centre. Arthurs was inside. That was in June 2006. Dante was eligible for parole 13 years later. He was knocked back in 2019, but you have to be reconsidered every 3 years. And that 3 years is up in June.
It must come around far too quickly for the victims' families.
Arthurs is one of Australia's most despised murderers. A guy called Douglas Crabb is one of our most prolific. He killed 5 people when he ploughed his 25-tonne Mack truck into a pub in Uluru in 1983. This guy gets kicked out of the Inland Motel because he's pissed and fighting. He walks 500 metres to his truck and hitches 2 of the 3 trailers, drives it around a bend through a car park and around a minibus into the bar he was just kicked out of. Gets out of the cab, leaves the engine running, smiles at one of the 16 people he injured, steps over one of the 5 who are dead, and walks off.
It's horrifying.
Hunters and Collectors wrote a song about it.
I got 42 wheels of pleasure and pain.
42 Wheels was the opening track of 1984's Jaws of Life album. Crabb could be out of jail in 4 months. Could be behind the wheel of a car again at the same time, although I hope if the authorities are dumb enough to let him out, they aren't dumb enough to give him his driver's licence.
If he committed the crime in the Northern Territory, why is he in jail in WA?
Because his sister Flo asked that he be transferred. I assume Flo lives in Perth and found it onerous to visit her brother in Alice Springs.
Surely they won't let him out.
Well, here's the thing with the Prisoner Review Board. They make recommendations, but they don't make the final decision. It comes down to the Attorney General of the day. So at some point in the coming weeks and months, John Quigley is going to have to make a tough call, or 3 tough calls.
Doesn't seem tough.
Well, no, it's not, because no popularly elected politician is ever going to free someone who tortured and murdered a 14-year-old boy, or raped and murdered an 8-year-old girl, or drove a 25-tonne truck into a crowded pub because he was pissed off at not being served.
It's political.
Absolutely, it's political. Just ask Catherine Burney. She should be out of jail. Been eligible for parole for more than 15 years, I think. Done every bit of rehabilitation she can. She's a model prisoner. She's the librarian at Bandia. Appeared in a prison version of the play Nonsense. Been recommended for parole countless times, but never going to get out because no politician is going to be the one who releases a person who was complicit in the murder of 4 innocent women. Defence lawyer Simon Watters reckons the parole board is essentially an extension of the justice system, so should be above the politics of the day. They don't want to be seen as the person who opens the gates for someone who has committed a heinous crime or a crime that created a lot of public outcry for fear of public backlash, is how Watters sees it.
Well, he's probably right.
He's absolutely 100% right. Catherine Burney proves it. Jim McGinty said no. Christian Porter said no. John Quigley didn't just say no. He introduced legislation that meant she could only be considered for parole every 6 years instead of 3. In 2018, we passed laws targeting people defined as a serial or mass killer. This is someone who has murdered 2 or more people on different days, or 3 or more people on the same day. Burney was the main reason we did this. These laws are intended to go some way to alleviating the trauma and suffering that survivors and related and secondary victims of mass and serial killers endure every 3 years under the state's parole regime, is what Quigley said at the time. The man responsible for the Greenough family axe massacre, William Patrick Mitchell, he's another one that'll fall under these laws. Old mate Doug Crabb fits the definition, so he might be brought under the 6-year program as well, which will upset Flo, but nobody else.
Well, it's probably a clever move by Quigley. It means it's only a political problem every 6 years instead of every 3.
It was a political act, which is why defence lawyer Tom Percy also reckons the Attorney-General should be kept out of the parole system. Tom's offered a third way, a different solution. He says the AG shouldn't have power of veto, but all parole board decisions should be subject to an appeal. He says life-changing decisions should not be made administratively and they should not be made politically.
Well, that might fly.
It would appeal to Quigley because in his heart and soul, Quigley's a defence lawyer. He would hate the idea of justice being subject to the vagaries of the politics of the day, but he's politically savvy enough to understand he can't just let the parole board go unchecked. Every Attorney-General has the ultimate get-out clause, though. The ultimate decision about who gets out of jail is up to the Governor, who will soon be this guy. Good luck with that one, criminals.
Well, they let some people out.
James Duggan killed teenager Rebecca Ryle in 2004. He's been free for the past month. Mate Peric shot his estranged wife Danica 4 times. He's out, but's being deported to Croatia. Shane William Donoghue drowned Stephen Pearce in the Peel Inlet in 1990. He's a free man now and has been since December. He stomped on Pearce's head and dragged him into the water. Donoghue was angry that bartenders at the Peninsula Hotel cut him off because he was too pissed and he blamed Pearce. There was a thong print on Pearce's face when they found him in the water, and the maniac who stood on his head while he drowned could be drinking next to you at the pub tonight.
Well, plenty of pissed up people in Byron Bay.
They're clearly not into their politics.
I hear there's a federal election coming up soon.
That's at the Byron Bay Blues Fest. That bloke did a particularly shit job of warming up an audience for a special guest.
G'day. It's great to be at Blues Fest.
Finally, he got the out of there.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Jimmy Barnes.
Well, David Campbell wanted to clear some things up.
Barnsy's son reckons most support acts get booed, and his dad said Albo went over relatively well with the crowd.
Yeah, I'm not buying it.
Would you turn up every day if we booed you?
Have you read the YouTube comments?
Yet you're still here.
Politicians have to be thick-skinned, and they will try to get anything to get a vote. That's French President Emmanuel Macron pitching in an impromptu behind-the-scenes shot while campaigning during the national election in France. And isn't it quite the chest run?
Oh, you are hairy like animal.
Enough to make any dolphin-smooth daggy dad look twice. I'm Ben Harvey. For more Up Late, click the subscribe button below.